I will never charge anyone who can't pay if you come to me and you ask. I know I mentioned on the app after the trial that I do have to charge to maintain access to the app and the technology, but don't let that be a barrier. Reach out to me if that is a concern. Okay, welcome everybody. Going to give it another minute. I just answered my own question. You do have to have the Substack app to watch this live, but the replay will be on the replay will be on Achieve Balance, and it will also be if anyone has heard of the Believe in Balance podcast. I'm also going to make this audio available there too, so you can get some of your questions answered. So welcome everyone. I'm going to jump in here. I'm doing this on my lunch, but I'm not going to promise I'm not going to eat an apple while I do this. I am going to answer your questions during the live event. I did work in 4 or 5 of them during the presentation, but the goal today is to go over some of the ones I missed, some that have come through the survey after the event, and to clear up any questions folks might have. So anyone joining in that doesn't know what I'm talking about, first of all, a week ago today, I did a live event called Believe in Balance. It's my new balance and fall prevention course and program. We did one workshop so far. There hopefully will be more to come. And that was on October 1st. And if folks wanted the replay or wanted the rebroadcast and missed how to get that, when you register, there's a replay sequence that probably 24 hours after the event, I put the instant replay rebroadcast up. And it is going to be up until the end of October. And then it's going to go into the course library at the Achieve Balance Academy. So if you missed that replay, I'm just looking at some of my notes. You can, I don't know if this is going to work. I tried to, first of all, if you jump it in, let me see. There's 2 pages now where you can watch the rebroadcast. And because I'm not skilled on how to bring that up, you can go to smartmovespt.com/balance, and you can click and open up the instant replay, or you can schedule it to get the reply sequence and get started. It's also on my live stream page here. So don't be confused when you go to register. Either way, you can jump in and watch the instant replay. So after that happens, someone else asked me, how do I get the course workbook? So if you stayed to the end of the event and you filled out the survey, I have to do this for legal purposes because I am talking about exercise. So there's a box you have to check when you sign up. It's like an informed consent and disclosure, like this is for educational purposes only. As I mentioned during the event, I do advise this course has the best outcomes when paired with a PT or someone trained at the Otago program. So sign up for the workshop if that point got missed. But after you complete the workshop and fill out the survey and give me feedback, and some of the questions I'm going to go over in a moment, talk about those items, that great feedback that came in. But after you do that, you should be, to thank you, you have 2 things. The digital guidebook opens up as a PDF, which you have immediate access to. And I also made an offer to connect via my app. And I'll show you that in a minute, but the app is digitizing. It's the same platform that I use for all my patients that may be balance related, but all types of orthopedic and neurological conditions. I use what's called the Webby portal. It's a HIPAA compliant platform. And I'm giving you access to I call it the Otago Foundations program, where you can watch the videos, review the screenings. And so if you miss that and you filled out the survey, check a couple of things for me. You want to, because a few folks were not getting that, because it comes through a different server. Wibby is the platform that I send my program um, pathway home exercises through. So you want to check and make sure that you have no reply at Wibby.com, whitelisted, and or David at Smart Moves PT. If it gets through to you, and again, I'm jumping around a little, but I do want to show you, because this is going to go up as a replay too. That's what that screen looks like. And you can click, you don't have to download an app for the trial, but you can click on the online report or online pathway, and it should open up to something that looks like this. So you can play the videos. Sorry for moving the camera around. I did do a follow-up video on accessing that too on Substack as a post. That would have been the title of that did you get access to my Believe in Balance app and Otago pathway? So you can look on, if you're already on Substack, you can look when we get done here for one of the most recent posts I did last week. Okay, so we answered about 5 or more questions during the workshop, things from blood pressure to nutrition. There's so much more that I wanted to cover. And again, I want to go over a couple more questions, including medications. We talked about blood pressure meds. We talked about how do you measure blood pressure. Remember, you can't manage what you're not measuring. So that, those mobility measurements that we covered were part of that original workshop. But I wanted to, there are so many medications. The Otago and Steady fall screening that we went over in the workshop cover the bare minimum. Like, are you on what they call it polypharmacy, which is on more than 1 or 2 medications, many of them in the classes of meds. That's why one of the things when you're working with a health professional, they'll ask you in detail, what are you taking? Because there's a global sort of class of what they call as fall risk inducing drugs. And the FRID is sort of an acronym used, but things like opioids, antidepressants, cardiac meds, anti-anxiety, cardiovascular, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, and even obviously muscle relaxants have an impact on your balance. So, in that initial screening, that is considered, and CDC and Steady's algorithm realizes that one of the biggest classes in the Otago course, I was really emphasized that one of the biggest classes of medications that put individuals, especially seniors, at higher risk is sleep aids, and it's almost at an epidemic level where it gets you to be able to get over to sleep and rest, which is important. But oftentimes, if the timing is off or the medication schedule isn't right or too much, wake up groggy, and there's a high incidence of falls in the morning. Just take a sip of my tea here. I promise I won't eat the apple. So enough about that for now. But I talk about that in my Achieve Balance course too when I weave in the importance of nutrition. So I'm just going to keep plowing through here. Great question came in. Can I perform my the exercises and seated? Absolutely yes. And that is this also relates to another question that came in over the wish list that was most popular when I asked, was the workshop too long, too short, or just right? Most folks thought it was too short and wanted more information specifically on the exercises. So I know in the course description, we talked about a lot, but the goal was to create an awareness, help you understand what's your why. And many folks were coming in that answered the survey and said, look, I'm looking for more information for myself. That was the most common answer about how I can get more in charge of my balance, health, and wellness. So when we move into all the breakdown of the program exercises. I say there, and I often say there's not, it's the program exercises are not, there's not any rocket science behind them. The foundation exercises are to cover things that beyond the screening, like the 4-stage balance, working on single leg balance. Some of the exercises can be, or the mobility items can actually be measured and monitored periodically, but they can also be part of your home exercises that you do to improve on those functional tasks, like sit to stand, balancing. Um, so that was a wish list item. And related, a funny question came in or comment. I learned how the lame assessments do work over time because I gave, and that's funny because probably, you know what? I think I'm going to just jump in and show you one example of how, like that lame sit to stand. I work in all the time with my patients when we just change the starting position. Let me see if I can. I did bring a chair over. I don't know how this is going to go. I hope I don't even have my. Let's see. All right. So maybe you can partly see me. I'm going to move this back just a little bit. Okay. Basic sit to stand. Before I even address movement, I always talk with my clients about breathing, proper breathing. I always say it's easy to say exert, exhale. You're moving with the motion. You're also breathing out. You don't want to be holding your breath. But you can take the basic transition sit to stand. And I've done this with a couple of my patients where let me grab a ball, make more sense. You can take that sit to stand and you can incorporate a ball between your legs. You can have them holding on to a ball. I have a patient now that I'm working with. He's a big football fan, and we talk about, and we're both Patriots fans, and we talk about, once you learn the basics, nose over toes, getting your arms forward, hips back, drive through the hips and come up. We use the arms at first, but we also then build in other tasks, dual tasking. I may be asking him, uh, name 5 pro football teams as you do this task. Pretend you're carrying the ball, you're blocking, and you're coming off. And you can do that with even offsetting your foot position. We talked about that tandem stance and going through the 4-stage balance. We worked through it quickly in the program workshop last week. But that same assessment, we can do stagger our stance when we go to stand up. If my feet are here now, I have my right leading under me, my left forward. There's a whole different recruitment now that has to happen with the leg. It's as close to the chair. If I have weakness on one side, I can challenge that side. I might need to be nearby. I might need an assisted device to help transition. But I can take that basic motion, or I can even go back from there, work on breathing. If you did download the program, either the guidebook or the app, you'll see some of the basic exercises are as simple as starting with rotations. You can't build in standing. If you can do that in standing, but I often start with my patients, just what does that feel like? Because we talked about the vestibular, the balance systems, but we also talked about the role of the eyes in I call them your GPS, but your inner ear. And if someone is telling me, tell me how that feels. As simple as that. We're all tech enabled now, meaning we're all looking down at our screens. I did mention briefly that there's a high percentage now of people with vestibular, so simply because they don't look at the horizon or they don't go through basic cervical rotation. You later on can add that in as an exercise with turning and twisting, but I want to ensure that someone is solid with those other proprioceptors, not only in their feet, but their visual senses before and I start to challenge them at higher levels. So that's just a quick demo. And if if you go through the app, basic exercises, I think, especially if you have any exercise or movement, sometimes exercise is a bad word. I believe it's the best medicine we could ever have, especially if you working through a neurological condition, or you're fighting sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass, which has a high incidence of um, loss of independence and falls. That's why we talked a bit about grip strength. But these functional measures can motivate you for improvement. But also, the levels of the Otago program are really, um, there's at least 10, 15 levels that I work my patients through, and I never assign all of them, but I start with where they are currently at. And that's, going through the assessment is the first line. But yes, to answer your question, that was a long way around. You can perform them seated, and you can progress to being more mobile, more difficult, more task oriented as your strength, balance, mobility improves. So we talked about wanting more, and I will be diving deeper in the next workshop too about what I just showed you there, a couple of tweaks to the mobility exercises, and how you kick them up a notch when you're ready. But again, it's always helpful before you get started. At the bottom of the registration page, the two screens that I showed you prior, click on that link and open that brochure I just showed. Send it to your health professional. Bring it in if you're already in PT. Ask your PT if they've heard of the Otago program, because one of the things that was surprising to me in looking at your answers from the survey is it was something like 60 or 70% of individuals that were here learning about their balance indicated that their balance confidence was kind of all over the map. From some that responded like on a 10-point scale, their balance confidence was like a 3 out of 10, up to like an 8 or a 9. So some are very confident, 8 and 9. A lot were in the 3 to 5 range. So having sort of a concern before they did the steady, more detailed assessment screening to then lead into the Otago mobility. If you concerned or confused what I mean by that, definitely jump into the workshop and look at the flow chart I shared. Because if you're that low, I was very surprised that so many people never had their balance screened before. So let's see. Oh, here's a couple. A few people actually asked me, are there balance devices? Are there technology tools that can improve my balance? And I know of several of the devices that are purported to be marketed right now for increasing that somatosensory, or that proprioceptive input for folks that are concerned that they may be losing that sensory component. And my short answer, again, is to look at the science, because two of the companies that folks sent in response, and I'm not throwing any companies under the rug, but it is kind of buyer beware, because I have a lot of experience in this area. So when proprioception declines with age without training, it can be medication related. There can be a whole host. It can be because you may have diabetes, MS, different things that would facilitate or increase the rate of that decline. You lose this mechanoreceptor component, whether it's touch, pressure. Myself, I'm a stroke survivor. My left side, I definitely have still to this day sensory loss. This is the reason why I have to up my game in terms of my balance exercises. But the technology tools that were mentioned, I'm very suspect at, because they're going through a different pathway to get on the market. They're going under the pathway of wellness and health. And that means they haven't gone through sort of FDA approval. There really hasn't been a lot of clinical research around these devices. And even when they link very cleverly to the bottom of the page, where they might say something like, we are a Harvard, based on evidence from a Harvard trial, for example, just throwing that out there because I know one of them is doing this. When you look at the product they have on the market, which is worn here to help with balance, or worn down at your wrist or your ankle, and they're saying that this device is proven effective based on one study where the device was in insoles in someone's shoe that showed favorable results for being able to improve balance confidence, then you should be suspect, and it should be front and center what information or what studies they're relating to the actual their product or someone else's research. So, and again, this goes back. I've looked at this stuff for 10, 15 years, and even about 6, 8 years ago, there were a couple of pro athletes who were wearing these bracelets and necklaces, and they were all over, MLB, for example, Major League Baseball. So everyone was jumping on the bandwagon, like, this is going to be energy. This is going to make me feel more balanced. There's been companies out there where you put it on, they do a test where they try to push your hands down. Those particular, I hopefully they're off the market now, but they got their wrists slapped by the FDA because they didn't have any proof behind that, and it is buyer beware, because anyone can put anything out on an infomercial or get an influencer to get behind that product just to earn affiliate commission. So be careful. My suggestion would be, in addition to working, what is proven is you work on those systems that are deficient. So you work at your proprioception, you work. That's what the program is designed to do, and you can build off of it. And if you pair and partner with the physio, like myself, that has a higher level understanding of the true devices that are out there and are working after clinical trial and on the market, products like that add rhythm, for example, I would go that direction because there's some good clinical science behind confidence with movement and not overthinking, and not for the purposes of this Q&A, but I would also say, look into better. If you're going to put your money somewhere, don't put it into a $300 to $500 device. Sometimes some of them come with subscriptions, so that cost adds up. If you are concerned about your fall to that level that you're looking for an intervention like that, and you don't already have a personal emergency response system like a Pendant or something that can detect falls, or at least a watch like the Apple Watch or something that could send a signal if you, God forbid, did fall, and you could send it to 911 or your own care team or a family member, I would say you're better off spending your money there, even on better footwear. We're going to talk about footwear, preparing for exercise. One of the biggest things I learned in the courses that I've taken on balance and fall is these rigid shoes, these rigid orthopedic shoes that folks wear, whether maybe it's for diabetes, maybe it's just for convenience, to be able to get yourself done and off, take your shoe on and off. The sole is so rigid, and the Velcro straps that cover it, is you can't feel the ground under you. So that's an obvious loss of that proprioceptive input. I have some of my patients and clients working out of their shoes, actually feeling the ground, those reaction forces on you on different surfaces. So your money would be better spent on like a balance foam discs, other tools that can help you have a heightened response to be able to challenge that proprioceptive component to your balance. And again, I think that's all I'm going to say on that, but just kind of buyer beware. Because one thing with the pulse detection things, they all work on some type of vibration. They're, for example, this is a joint mobility and monitoring sensor. I showed it during the workshop, but some of these devices and the questions that came in were, um, locked into an upper extremity, and they're about this big. So there's this neural fatigue that happens. These are mechanoreceptors that are working on that proprioceptive input. And there's this muscle, let's say, accommodation that happens, and PTs are, trained to be able to change those frequencies in different modalities for pain control and also activating muscles. But certainly the cheap devices over the counter are not are not able to do that. So um, I was very surprised on the next question. Um, Actually, this came in. I had three people ask me, "Can this program be offered in a group?" And that's the ultimate goal. Is once we get through all the workshops, like I said, this is going into the Chi Balance Course Academy. But part of the success that I hopefully got across with some of the testimonials that I was using in clinic with this program and this model, I also applied in small groups, like live sessions with 4 to 8 to 10 people. I did a TRX neuro-based group class. We tend to name our groups, but this was our ninja group where we had folks in their 40s to, let's say, 60s that came in after an orthopedic injury. They were discharged from therapy or just transitioning, and they came into this balance course, and we challenged them to get them conditioned, to get them fit, but also using the TRX. If you can't see, I'm a big fan. I have one behind here. I use myself, but we use that system to build in some of the flexibilities of the Otago-based fall prevention exercise we talked about previously, but also specifically to a Parkinson's group. I had a smaller group of roughly four that came in routinely for once a week balance training that was all following this Otago model. So there are flexibilities. And during the pandemic, I use this model to present to stroke support groups. I've done in person with Parkinson's support groups, senior centers. So yes, that is going to be part of the package because with everyone getting locked out of services now, I mentioned on the workshop, things are closing. People are getting um, less opportunity at discharge to have appropriate transition into maintenance or fall prevention programming. Um, and programs closing. I've had several senior centers that were using an Otago-based model right in my own community, and those programs were shut down when the money stopped flowing. So when you take $1 trillion out of the healthcare economy, not my point in this Q&A, but services are going to get cut. They already are, and it's not going to get any better. So I'm planning to be able to use this to be able to help folks that are already struggling. It's a disgrace and it's a crime that some of our veterans our services have been cut. But I want to be able to offer this to anyone who needs it at a very, very, very inexpensive um, offering that I can then take for those really in need. I can offer scholarships and make this free for anyone who needs it. So I will never charge anyone who can't pay. If you come to me and you ask, I know I mentioned on the app after the trial that I do have to charge to maintain access to the app and the technology, but don't let that be a barrier. Reach out to me if that is a concern. Uh, So I think I promised. Well, I didn't actually promise. I know that was one of the things when I ran over. Um, yes, thank you, Anna. I appreciate hearing that. It's true. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm 25 years in practice, clinical practice. I've always operated outside of the box. I've realized, especially during the pandemic, and I shared this on the workshop, the folks that I thought would be most willing and wanted to get back into clinic the fastest were the ones that asked me, I love this hybrid model. Can we keep doing this remote? Because for the first time, I feel confident. I know you're working with me, even if it's virtual or occasionally today. I have a hybrid practice, meaning I'm in patients' homes when they need me to be. We transition and those touch points. Because one of the big things about the program and what it's designed, yes, we address lower body strength. We address balance. We address aerobic endurance. And we'll talk more about that in another workshop because that's where I feel the Otago model is a little weak. As they say, yes, get up and walk. And hopefully all these exercises make you more comfortable and you feel the term that keeps coming up is paralyzed, like you feel like you can regain some of your independence. And then you start to nudge more and you're on your feet more. So you start to do more And not everyone is ever going to get to the 150 minutes a week and movement goal, but certainly getting someone from being mostly sedentary to up and transitioning, be able to be independent in their home and feel strong and confident in their home. The accountability part of that is what I'm building in through the group coaching, but also through the app itself. If you had a chance to take me up on the free trial, there's the exercise, the videos, but there's also a little time clock that runs, and you can check off if you did the exercises. You can actually check off the difficulty, and you can see trends over time. Just like in the Otago program, when I talked about the importance of and motivation for patients seeing their mobility measurements and seeing at week one, three months out, 6 months out, 12 months, and year plus, seeing those numbers work favorably and one of the examples was one of my stroke survivors who took charge of their program, bought in. They were doing 7 sit to stance. For them, that was a great start. Most recently measured, they're up over 18, and that's just from being consistent. And they actually use some of those tracking tools I talk about on the workshop. And we meet. Now we've stretched it out. We're only touching base once every second or third week. And they're pretty much just use me as a coach. They use me. I'm getting bored with this exercise. You saw on the app, I'm doing this many. What should I do next? And that's really how moving forward into building this program out, I hope to be seen more as a coach and a guide, and actually to power other physical therapists and folks that, see the potential for this program, but know that we're not addressing this at discharge. And we're also not, for the most part, addressing this at our annual wellness visits. I just went 3 weeks ago. Quick personal story that there was a checklist of things that they wanted to go down for someone my age, from colonoscopy to, mental health, depression. Checked. There was nothing on that box that addressed musculoskeletal fitness or fall and balance risk. Nothing. I think that's a crime. I think that we can wait for other folks to start to do it, or as PTs, we are the movement experts. We all should be putting this program or some version, the screening version, into our clinics, and folks should know where to go. For example, in the next workshop, we're going to talk about assigning yourself to a therapist, or how do you progress the program. And that's one of the things that folks asked for more on the survey. So I'm going to try to answer those questions first, specific to the exercises. But I'm going to ask you to first dive in and try them yourself. If you check the boxes and you feel that you're safe to get started, and that's why you had to check certain boxes and do the CDC full risk screen. And if you are relatively low risk and you feel comfortable proceeding, try a few of them, even if it's the 5 at the beginning, the seated. I went over a couple of them before, and if you guys missed it, I'll put this live later, but just showing how the sit to stand in itself can become a more of a challenging, progressive um, um, exercise or physical activity you can work into your daily. But again, I teach all my patients how to properly breathe, and before they believe and start moving. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. The one question, yeah, I'm going to ask you one more thing. I was surprised, and I know I had to wrap up quick at the end, but I'm going to pop up this slide. And again, if anyone knows how to do screen share on Substack Live, I would appreciate hitting me up and showing me, because I tried. No one asked me on this last slide, what the heck is my dog doing on there with mental sweat? We talked about moving upstream, the takeaways. We talked about, and if you're curious and missed that, get the rebroadcast, because it was the last screen where I talked about what's next. I talked about, swimming upstream. I talked about, get ahead of the fall, talked about, nothing happens till something moves. That was that Einstein quote that I talked about. If you want to change your ability to stay on your feet and stay strong, you can't just sit and think about it. You can't just buy a device. You can't buy into any type of monitoring program unless you are committed to moving. It's the best thing that builds your body armor as we get older to offset sarcopenia and all those other things, to control blood sugar, all those things that maybe make you able to have to, if you are someone who's needs multiple medications and you work with your provider and maybe your movement and your mobility plan help to normalize or improve your blood sugar, like you talk to that person at the right time. But um, the mental sweat part, I was surprised that no one asked. That was a client. If you got the guidebook after, I talked a little bit, so you can hear more on that. But the mental sweat part was a patient of mine who was working with another therapist, and I'll end on here, and was doing a lot of table-based, I hate to say it, the typical cookie cutter clinic-based exercises that people get before they get discharged, and then they don't have a follow-up. He saw what I was doing with patients, and I was doing versions of this Otago model, this balance-based model. He moved over to work with me. He asked the receptionist if he could get on my schedule, which I ultimately ended up working with him. And after 2 sessions, more on his feet, more challenging his balance, dual task exercises, like a little similar demo. And we're going to get into this in the next workshop, so I promise. But he said something I'll never forget. He said, boy, he's like, this is a different type of workout. He goes, I feel like this is like a lot of mental sweat. And I'll always remember that. And I told him, I said, if I ever coin that term, I'm going to have to give you 10% if we sell a gazillion shirts. But what that last screen was, and no one asked me, was my dog sleeping on my shoulder as I took him back from doing some training out in the field. Labs have a lot of energy. I took him out, especially when he was 1 and 2, just to wear him out. But he would immediately just zonk out as soon as he got in the car. His brain had worked, his body had moved, and that's the same thing the client was experiencing. They're saying, I have to think about this. I don't have to work so hard. It's not that I'm getting my heart rate through the roof fatigue, but it's this brain training. And that's what balance-based exercises are about. You can make them as hard as you want, moving more on the sport performance side, or you can make them so that you can bring them down to a level where you can ensure that you just have better mobility to be able to age well in place and thrive in place. So more on that next time, but that was the mental sweat, because it does work for all. We just need a framework. We need to be held accountable. And if you missed this live and you just jumped in, the rebroadcast is available. Again, I'll say it one more time because I'm also going to put this on the Believe in Balance podcast as an audio form for this Q&A. It's smartmovespt.com/believe. And that will get you instant replay access for a limited time. You get the guidebook, you get all the offers we talked about. But I think I covered everything I wanted to do today. And I am going to, really dive into your wish list items about more exercise. I'm going to go into more on nutrition as I get ready to sneak in a quick lunch before I see my 1:00 patient. And I thank you for sending in your questions. If you need to link to the survey, that appears after you watch the workshop, after you do the consent to watch the workshop, when you register, whether the instant replay or usually you can pick one or 2 days out. You'll get, after the event, you'll get an email that has the replay link if you want to just have it. But you also get, immediately after the event ends, linked to the Believe in Balance survey, which then, with your feedback, gives you access to the offers that I mentioned, the guidebook and the digital trial of the app. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time today. Again, I believe I should end with saying, until next time, keep the faith, stay on your feet, keep moving forward. And I hope to have more of these as more folks come in to the Believe in Balance course with more questions, and we'll grow this program together. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.